young people now are looking at the world and going, is the country going to exist in 20 years? Are we going to have and by the way, not because of a foreign threat, not because we're going to be invaded, not because we're going to be nuked, but they're going, is the country going to exist, or are internal forces pulling the country apart? And are those people, the young people in this study, the lower happiness reported by the younger under 30 in the United States and Canada is linked with lower levels of satisfaction and social support, lower satisfaction with living conditions, greater stress and anxiety, lower trust in government, and higher perceptions in corruption. Because people are looking around going, is this country even going to exist? It doesn't seem like it's going to exist. It seems to be way too corrupt to exist in 20 years. So what do you do? Wait a minute, by the way, most happy places for people to live under 30, number 1, Lithuania, number 2, Israel. Maybe there's something to that ethno-state concept. But so what I'm saying here is that, like, everyone's running around now going, how do we prevent people from being radicalized and becoming schizophrenic? Which I think is a good goal. But I think that part of that really has to look at the entire picture of what's going on right now. Younger people are sitting there wondering, does Brigitte have a cock? Will I afford a house? Is there a job for me? And there isn't. They're not. And she does. Those are the answers to those questions. But they're not. Is the country being run by pedophiles? Yes. Does Brigitte have a cock? Most likely. Am I going to afford a house? Not nearly. Do I have, what kind of job am I going to get? Nothing. Do you know what young people do now? If you're a young person, this is what you do. You graduate school. Let's give you a name. Your name, I'm going to give you a male and a woman. Sorry, non-binaries. I'm just going to do a male and a woman right now, okay? The male's name is Brett. His name is Brett. B-R-E-T-T, Brett. He is a 22-year-old male. And then Carolyn. Carolyn is a 22-year-old female, okay? This is what happens to Carolyn and Brett. Carolyn went to NYU. She's a smarty pants. She's smart. Carolyn grew up in Rhode Island, and her parents were together, and she's got a lovely home life, and she has a nice older brother, but he ended up on drugs, and he's just doing the best he can. But Carolyn went to NYU, and she went to the Stern School of Business because she's going to take over the world, and she loves all the female founders, and she listens to fucking, motivational speeches from that bitch who founded Bumble, Whitney, fucking whatever, Wolf Herd, and all these other people, and she's a badass finance bitch, and her pet causes are women's literacy in the third world. She wants women in the third world to know more about money, and that's what she does, and her name is Carolyn, and she moves from Rhode Island, and she goes to NYU, and she likes NYU, and she's very liberal, and all of her friends are very rich, and she thinks Trump is gross, and always has, and she's in love with a French guy, but he doesn't really love her, and it's whatever. Carolyn, okay? Carolyn, okay? Brett grew up in a suburb outside of Chicago, okay? Brett's father killed himself because he had undiagnosed mental illness. It was very difficult. He shot himself in their garage, and Brett found him, and half of his face was blown off. And Brett called the police, but he knew it was no use because half of his father's face is in the garage. Brett's mother died of cancer early on, okay? So Brett was living with his father who killed himself. Now he's 17 years old, so he's right on the ledge of, he's going to be emancipated. He doesn't need a parent, okay? Now he doesn't get any real money from his father's health with his life insurance. His dad didn't have it. So he didn't have any life insurance, okay? And they were renting. Here's the good news for Brett. Brett writes a great college essay, and it's called I Found My Father's Body in the Garage, and half of his head was gone. And so the people at the college admissions office, because Brett is an A- student, he's pretty fucking good, okay? And he's on the baseball team. He's not the star, but he's on it. And he writes an essay. I love baseball, and I love playing baseball. It takes my mind off the time I found my father's body in the garage with half of his face gone. So Brett goes to Northwestern, pretty good school, and he plays baseball, okay? And his father's dead, okay? Carolyn's at the Stern School of Business. She wants women in Afghanistan to learn about, Bitcoin. Brett's at Northwestern trying to get over the trauma of his father, who was sacrificed on the altar of globalization and Reagan letting all the mental hospitals out and no health care and whatever, okay? His father was also abusing pharmaceutical drugs and whatever. It just is what it is. He was also a drunk. So Brett's at Northwestern and Carolyn's in NYU. Now, Caroline and Brett never should have met, but Brett was traveling to New York City to see a friend he grew up with who was attending Pace, a much less reputable school. In fact, it's a piece of shit. It's a prison, but that's where retards go. And Brett knew a lot of retards growing up in his town. So he goes to visit his buddy, and his buddy goes, sometimes you go to these, like, cool bars with really hot chicks, and they're all super rich, and it's not like they'll ever go out with us, but I fucked a model last month. And Brett's like, we're going. So they go to this bar. I don't know. I haven't been to bars in years. I don't know what they call it. They call it, it's called, the bar is just called Jew. J-U. It's a Japanese name. Now, Brett is in this bar called Jew, and he meets Carolyn, who is a finance major at the Stern School of Business. She's graduating next year, and he's going to graduate next year too. Brett, of course, has majored in education because maybe he'll be a gym teacher because he actually thinks it would be cool if he could help kids who had found their dead father in their garage get over it by connecting them to team sports, which he feels is one of the only reasons he hasn't killed himself. Okay? Caroline is outside, and Brett steps out. Brett's not a smoker and never has been, but everyone's smoking and looks cool. So Brett decides to smoke a cigarette, and Carolyn's outside, and they start chatting. Where are you from? This, that, and the other thing. One thing leads to the next, okay? They end up going home together and hooking up. This is very rare. Brett's not a Casanova. It doesn't happen all the time. Neither is Carolyn, okay? But they decide they're going to get married. They're going to make a go of this, okay? After several months of dating, long distance, Brett decides he's going to move to New York because Carolyn seems to be on some better financial footing, okay? So he moves to New York, and Carolyn and him start dating. Now, the power dynamic's a little off because she's got all the money and she's got all the friends. And the world has kind of pushed her forward, and there's nothing wrong with that. But she's got the fancy degree from the school, and Brett feels a little cucked. But he goes with it because he doesn't really have a family. His father's head was all over the garage. Okay? Carolyn loves Brett. She treats him really nicely. She likes him. He's a nice guy. He's pure, and he's simple. And she says that to her friends. Like, he's pure. He's like a good guy, and I just love him. You know, he uprooted his whole life from me. He's this Midwestern guy, and he likes sports and baseball, and his dad blew off his head, and his mother's dead, but he's a good guy. And then one day, Carolyn is having dinner on the Upper West Side, and the French guy that she was in love with 2 years prior passes. And he notices Caroline, and he comes over, and he says to her, oh my God, it's crazy to see you. And she's like, hi, how are you? Now, this French guy is French aristocracy. He's got lots of money, an absurd amount of money. In fact, there's not that many people left in France with money. This guy's one of them. Caroline knows that, but it doesn't matter. It's filed away in the back of her head. He also has movie star good looks. But Carolyn's in a relationship with Brett, a regular Midwestern guy who watched his dad. We didn't watch him, but the body was still warm when he walked into the garage. You know what I mean? Pretty sick of his dad to do that. Close to school. But Carolyn sees this French guy, Jacques, and she chats with Jacques. And you know what? She's going to walk to get her Uber. And she decides that and he goes, well, maybe I'll just walk with you. And she goes, okay. And they chat. She doesn't mention that she's seeing anyone, but it doesn't come up. It doesn't come up. Why would it come up? Okay? And he said, I'd love to see you again. We should go to this opening of this gallery. My friend in Soho, my cokehead friend who has no talent, has rented a gallery in Soho, and she's inflicting her mediocre art on people. Let's all go down there and see what that's about. And she, living downtown, sees no reason not to attend a very public art gallery show in Soho with an old friend. It's not a big deal. She's not cheating on this Midwestern guy who's so pure and simple. His father killed himself in their garage. So Carolyn from the Stern School of Business, who cares that women get Bitcoin so they can transcend the circumstances of living in an Afghan cave, decides to go to the opening of a mediocre artist in Soho with Jacques, a very wealthy French guy. All the while, her simple, pure, Midwestern, beautiful boy, beautiful, life that they have together. She calls him a boy. He doesn't love that. But she does, and she realizes it's just because he doesn't have a lot of money and he doesn't come from anything, okay? She decides to go to this gallery opening with Jacques. Well, the gallery opening becomes a lunch, and the lunch becomes a coffee. And then she eventually has to tell Jacques, listen, I'm actually in a relationship, but I don't know what the hell's going on here, okay? But Jacques says, listen, I totally understand, but here's the reality. You're graduating school next year. I've always loved you. I never thought you loved me. We're meant to be together. We're meant to get married at my family's vineyard in the south of France. You know it, and I know it. So what are we doing here? And she walks home and she's crying and it's cold and it's wet and it's raining, but she knows that Jacques is right. She knows that she's going to go and marry this rich guy and she's going to destroy this man, this Midwestern guy who's a good guy. And she goes home and they have a talk and she says, listen, Brett, go away. Listen, Brett, you know I love you, and these 2 years have been the best years of my life. But I just feel like there's too many things here that will just never work. I think we want different lives, you know? You mentioned that you love the Midwest and that you'd like to go back one day, and I could never see myself living there. He goes, yeah, but that's just something I say. I mean, I uprooted my whole life for you. I kind of like New York. I actually love the pizza. I thought I'd never like anything better than the tavern-style Chicago pizza, but I actually love the pizza here. She goes, here's the thing. This isn't about pizza, Brett. It's not about food. It's about the fact that I met a guy and I'm in love with him and I'm sorry. Now Brett is hollowed out. He's hollowed out. He's vacant. There's nothing. He's angry, and then the anger translates into a hopelessness. It's a stage 4 diagnosis. It's, we've denied the appeal to death row. He knows immediately, as soon as those words leave her mouth, that there is nothing to be said and nothing to do. That he can't compete with this guy, this fairy tale French rich guy, and she's been in love with forever because he's going to provide her a type of life that Brett can't. So he then gets a small apartment in Manhattan. He moves out because he'd been living with Caroline for the last 8 months. He started out in a small apartment. Then he's living with her in a little bigger apartment in a better location, but he moves to Brooklyn, okay? He moves to Brooklyn. He says, fuck it, I'm going to start moving to Brooklyn. I'm going to live in Brooklyn now because who cares? I just want to get laid. I want to do drugs. And I want to just be angry because my fucking girl threw me. And Carolyn keeps going. And that's where her part of the story ends. We don't know what happens to Caroline. She gets engaged to this French guy. She gets really wealthy. She gets really rich. They split their time between France and the United States. She has a fake job, and so does he. But Brett's now living in Brooklyn. And Brett oscillates from the far left to the far right. One day he's a literal neo-Nazi. The next day he's a far left anarcho-communist. And all the while, he listens to the Tim Dillon show every day. Every day, 'cause he has no idea which way I'm going to go. He has no idea. He just knows I'm angry at things, and he likes that. And he listens to my show. But one day, he's an Antifa, and the next day, he's a Proud Boy. He's just angry. He's full of hatred. He's full of hatred because the rent keeps going up, and nothing makes sense. I don't know what this has to do with anything, really, economically. I thought it would say more about the economy than it actually did. But my point is this. We've empowered certain women at the expense of men that have found their fathers dead in their thing. I mean, it's true. So that's what I'm getting to. So this guy's now a radical because we made this woman fall in love with French people, which is disgusting. Well, that's what happens. And Brett dies of an accidental overdose in Bushwick. And his body is found by his Chinese landlord. You see, I made the landlord Chinese. I could have went another way, but it was a Chinese landlord. And they found Brett's body. And they couldn't call his dad. His dad's already dead. Sad. This is what's happening to young people all over the country. Well, it is.